Hello everybody in Luqman Nation. This is Jacqueline Luqman and I'm going to be flying solo for a few minutes. And today is Thursday, February 22nd. And I am coming to you live in Coffee, Current Events, and Politics in Luqman Nation from Washington, D.C., where it is finally feeling a little bit seasonal again, but it's been hot, so climate change is real. And thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to hop on, but I really want to get to my very first guest. We've got a very important story that I want to make sure we take the time to cover, because this is one of those stories that you need to hear about, that happens in small towns around America, where you wonder what's going on with the police. And it's the kind of stuff you see in the movies where the police are doing nefarious things, and that, you know, there's cover-ups and there's questions, and there are, you know, relatives of police involved and all this kind of stuff. But this isn't a movie. And these are the kinds of issues people have been dealing with in regard to law enforcement for a long time. And it's just disturbing that these kinds of cases are still happening. So I'm gonna talk to our friend Bob Schlehuber, who is, I can't even tell you what Bob doesn't do. Bob does everything. Bob's a producer for Eugene Puryear's show, By Any Means Necessary, with Eugene Puryear and Sean Blackman, that we have been fortunate enough to be guests on several times. Bob is involved in theater. He supports a lot of local DC community groups. He is an organizer, and I hope he's going to be on in a few minutes. But in the meantime, I want you to take a look while I'm hoping that you guys share this video, and invite your friends, because we're going to talk about a lot of things, but it's going to be a great show. I think you're going to enjoy some of the stuff we talk about, but I want to get to the serious stuff first. Definitely follow us on Facebook. Here on Facebook, search for Luqman Nation. Follow us on Twitter, Luqman Nation with the number 1, LUQMANNATION. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Share our videos. Invite your friends. You can support us through monthly support, through Patreon, or you could give us a one-time donation to continue doing the work that we do through PayPal and through GoFundMe. And you can find all of those platforms under Luqman Nation, LUQMANNATION. Oh my gosh, I cannot talk today. But before I get into anything else, I want you to take a look at this video from News 4 out of Jacksonville, Florida. This involves a case that happened in Baker County, in which a 31-year-old black man was shot to death on the property of someone who's related to a former sheriff's deputy. Let me let you take a look at this video, and I think Bob will be on in a few minutes to talk more about it.
Parents know just a few things right now from investigators. Their son was found dead, shot multiple times in the head on that private property. No charges have been filed, and his killer is still walking free tonight. That last part is what they say they hope to change. Dozens gathered at this church tonight, hoping to help DJ Broadus' family find out what really happened to their son. Members of Broadus' family, the community, and advocacy groups all coming together out of frustration.
Go talk to Baker County Sheriff.
It was February 3rd when the 31-year-old father was found shot to death execution style on this large Baker County property. A member of the family who owns that private land, Gardner Fraser, was taken in for questioning. He has not been charged. Fraser's father is a former Baker County Sheriff's deputy, and the Broaduses fear that connection could be preventing transparency in the investigation. It's not clear what connection, if any, Broadus had to Fraser or why he was on the family's property. But 17 days after the killing, the family says even their simplest questions to law enforcement have gone unanswered. Broadus' father says regardless of what really happened, his son's killer is still free.
We can't wait 60, 90 days for them to tell us, that he's all for it. This is self-defense, or this is a stand your ground, or an accidental shooting. That's not the way my son was killed, not the way he was shot.
There's so much information that they don't have. We went through a list of 23 questions that the family had for the FDLE, and maybe one or two of them had an answer. So first and foremost, I hope that they get some kind of closure. I hope that they get the information that they need. What happened to their son?
And I did try to reach out to Gardner Fraser tonight, but my call was not returned. FDLE has also said they cannot comment on an ongoing investigation. We are live in McClenny tonight. Ethan Calloway, Channel 4, the local station.
Ethan, you reported that there were some advocacy groups at this town hall meeting tonight. Who were they and why were they there?
Well, Joy, this family and advocates and supporters of theirs believe that there may be a racial prejudice component to all of this. So they have now enlisted the help of Black Lives Matter, for one, and Dream Defenders out of Miami. You heard from one of their members in the story. They are all here really just to provide their support and to hopefully help this family get some answers in this investigation. Joy.
All right, Ethan Calloway reporting live tonight. Ethan, thank you.
So let's just say, just for clarity's sake, that we doubt very seriously that anybody who is the victim of a shooting at the hands of a member of law enforcement, let's just be clear that law enforcement is probably going to, in these little small towns, law enforcement's probably going to try to cover that up regardless of who the victim is. But the fact that Mr. Broadus was found, as they said in the newscast, execution style. So he was found shot in the back of the head, I'm guessing. When the report was originally issued, it was heavily redacted. The other person who was on the property, who is now named, who is the son of the former sheriff's deputy, but in the original report, that person was not named. That person was charged and released. From what we could tell, that's the only person that was on the property other than Mr. Broadus. So you have this situation where a man has been shot execution style on this property. The only other person on the property was the son of the sheriff's deputy, former sheriff's deputy. That person was not named in the original report, was questioned and then released, wasn't charged with anything. And then the sheriff's department, realizing how sketchy all of this looked, right? For the sake of transparency, this is what they said in their original reporting of the incident, called in the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, which is like the higher state authority of Florida law enforcement, higher than the sheriff's department, to come in and investigate this case that the sheriff's office had already questioned, not charged, and released the only other person who was on the property, who wasn't originally named in the report, and who also just happens to be the son of the former sheriff's deputy. I don't know about you, but that looks really, really bizarre to me. And it looks really, really bizarre to the members of this young man's family, which is why advocacy groups made a trip down to Florida. Oh, good. Bob is on. He is in the video chat. So let me see if I can connect with him, and then he can fill you in on the details of this case that I can't. So hold on. Let me see if I can get this right. Okay, let me see if I can connect to Bob. Let me get in there. I am hoping I can do this. Give me a couple of minutes, guys. All right. Let me switch my video. Maybe that will be helpful. I'm going to switch over to the other video, so hold on, guys. Some last minute configure jiggering. Hey, Bob. Hey, Bob, can you hear me? Let's see. Oh, look at that. There we go. Hey, Bob, can you hear me?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Fabulous. Let me make sure that everybody online can hear us too. So you guys online, let me know if you can hear me and Bob, if you're having any kind of issues with the tech. If you hear weird noises, if you see weird things behind us, let us know that everything's okay. I can see you on the screen, Bob.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Man, thank you so much for doing this and coming on to talk about this case. Because when you first told us about it, maybe 2 weeks ago, we looked at it and we were really, really not shocked, but really angry at the lack of detail they had in this initial report. Like, so this young man was found shot to death. There was no mention of how many times he was shot in the original report. When the original report was released, it was heavily redacted. The only other person who was on the property was apparently questioned by the Baker County. Is that it?
Yeah, so on February 3rd, Dominic Broadus II was shot 3 times, once in the mouth and twice in the neck.
Oh my God.
At close range, and what we're deeming as execution style, sometime between 2 and 4 p.m. in the afternoon. The most likely murderer and the person who owned the property was a young man named Gardner Ryan Frazier. And Gardner, as you had mentioned, was the son of the former deputy sheriff of the county, Baker County, where the shooting took place. And not only that, his father, Ryan T. Frazier, the former deputy sheriff, was a former Jacksonville police officer who, get this, in 2008 was fired from the police force in Jacksonville for shooting an unarmed black man. He didn't kill him, but because it was so just outrageous that he shot a man that was basically stripping a building of copper. And as the man ran, he had shot him in the arm. And so what's outrageous is this is a type of sheriff's office that is fine with hiring somebody that was fired from the police force right next door to them. And to hire him in Baker's County was outrageous after he was fired from Jacksonville police. Well, you ask yourself, well, why would they hire him? Well, the great-grandfather of Gardner Frazier, this young man, is the namesake on a local hospital.
Oh, get out of here.
Good old boys network. Frazier Memorial Hospital is the main hospital in McClenny. His father, deputy sheriff, and now him. They lived on a large nursery, and that's where the shooting took place. And so the nursery over the years had employed all sorts of young people in the summer. So a lot of people are economically tied to this family and don't want to speak out against them because of the economics. I don't think it's as much as a physical threat that they're scared of, but just a general way of life and being that they have no control over when they have no representation. McClenny is a type of town where, while you have a significant black population, they don't have representation in politics, on the school board. They don't have black-owned businesses in the town. And so ultimately, black people there are suppressed and not able to speak out when crimes like this happen. So on February 3rd, the Baker County Sheriff Department said, you know what, we shouldn't handle this case because of the conflict of interest. We're going to hand it over to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Well, what's funny about that is we talked to a local pastor in the area that works for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, and he said Baker County hasn't had a murder in some years. They're a tiny little sheriff's office, so they don't have a proper crime lab to even investigate a homicide.
Oh.
So they were just trying to score political points. So out of the gate, you have the Baker County saying, oh, we're handing this off because we don't want a conflict of interest, when they would have had to hand it off anyways if it was just random strangers with no conflict of interest. So you're dealing with a sheriff's department. And on top of that, this sheriff's department in 2016, when the new department sheriff came in, they did an audit of their weapons and were missing 14 guns. One was an M16, several handguns, and a couple rifles.
Hold on. So in this small town where this family basically runs everything.
One of like 6 or 7
okay.
Families, yeah.
And several members of this family have been involved in law enforcement.
Correct.
There was an audit done of the inventory of the sheriff's department, and several pieces of ammunition were missing.
Correct.
Okay.
Had audited their evidence locker, and they had containers with both money and drugs in one container. I mean, it's not the most efficient sheriff's department,
to say the least.
And so February 3rd happens when he was shot. February 4th goes by, and then since then, as you said, very little answers were given, and it was just basically a mysterious kind of unfolding of information that did come out. So, for example, February 6th, 3 days after the father was told that he could come pick up his son's car at an impound lot.
Okay.
He gets to the impound lot. They say, you can have your son's car back, but you have to pay $340. So his son died 3 days earlier. Now he has to pay to get the car back. But then it gets to the car, and none of the items that were in the car, they were all there, left untouched. So the police impounded the car, but actually didn't even go through and collect any evidence or seemingly do anything with the car, nor would they tell the father for another week until a local reporter found out where the car was picked up. So the family did not know if their son was driven there. Did he drive himself there? Did somebody take him there from a different location? Eventually, they found the car was itself found on the property. And this would be in a basic police report, but as you mentioned, the police report was heavily redacted. And this is, I think, one of the odder things about the police report. And this, again, shows you that the sheriff's office has no desire to be transparent as much as they say that. There's a part that says other person or persons, and that's redacted. Well, we recently found out while he was talking, the deputy sheriff was talking on background with the local reporter. He said, you know what, when you find out who that person was, you'll have a good laugh about it.
What?
And now the sheriff just thinks this information that's being hidden from the family is inconsequential as it is, that he'll have a good laugh about it. That maybe the person wasn't even there and that the person was put on the report mistakenly. So again, it's just kind of a joke and a game for these people. It's not something that's serious. It's not about this family finding justice. It's just funny when you find out this information along the way. So the last few weeks have been incredibly painful for the family. Basic questions of, did you check for fingerprints on the car? Did you take the young man in that had shot our son and checked his handprint on the gun that you recovered on the scene to make sure there was bullet residue? Did he get a lawyer? Did you arrest anybody else? Have you questioned anybody else?
Right.
All of these basic questions that you think you just have a timetable even from the FDLE, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, on when charges may be filed. Everything is met with, well, we can't tell you, it would ruin the integrity of the investigation.
Oh my God. And see, for people who live in like larger municipalities and live in big cities, I'm here to tell you that kind of attitude, unfortunately, in a lot of small towns, with that kind of history, that's pretty common. In a lot of, coming from a small town myself, yeah, this kind of protectionist attitude of powerful families, that's pretty common everywhere, but also this kind of standing around and just laughing and joking at, oh, this is, oh, what a pickle this person is going to be in, and the complete dismissal of a family's pain, and the fact that a crime has occurred and they're not actively covering it up maybe, but they're absolutely dragging their feet in really investigating this crime because for obvious reasons. But this is so common in small town life for a lot of Black and poor people, and this is what they experience when they try to get justice from the justice system.
And so much of it's not even in the current moment that the suppression and cover-up happens. We were in McClenny and in Jacksonville the last 2 days. We held a town hall. It was a remarkable turnout. 130 people came to a church. People have had enough in this small town, and they expressed that they were ready to fight, that it had been decades since they've been able to fight and mobilize, and they had enough of it, and they were ready to stand up.
Wow.
But at the same time, we had one young woman come about halfway through the meeting, and she said, I was too scared to come tonight until I saw you guys all on Facebook Live, and it gave me the strength to come. But after the meeting, I just want to read you, this was one of the attendees. She goes, I saw you, this is the next day, she goes, I saw you last night. A lot of people sat quiet, afraid of retaliation. They'll target your kids, any of your family members. They'll go pulling you over for no reason and just messing with you. Then you'll go to court, and the judge already knows what to do. They write everything in the folders when you go to court. So these people aren't necessarily physically afraid, but it's just the mindset, again, that at any moment they can lose their livelihood, their kids can be pulled over, their kids might get a bad grade in school, the principals in relation to the family in a situation like this, and then the judges know each other. McClenny, I asked somebody, tell me a little bit about McClenny, and the guy goes, McClenny is a type of town that if you go to the local state's attorney in the courthouse, they have a mural there with the KKK. So we went to the little town, the state house, the courthouse, and sure enough, when you walk in, there's maybe a 30-foot by 10-foot mural, and right in the top center, there's 3 KKK people on horses. And the guy, I asked him, I go, when was this painted? He goes, a long time ago. 2002.
Good God, come on.
2002 was a long time ago. 17 years ago. I mean, whatever, 16 years
16 years ago.
And 3 guys. Heritage, not hate was the line people kept saying, right? So this isn't this is just the heritage of our people.
And see, this is why this story is important. It's not just because this looks like another case of law enforcement abuse and taking the life of another unarmed Black man, and certainly abusing all kinds of power that they have. But it's also important because people need to understand that people in this country are still living under the very long shadow of that racist history, that legacy of the KKK and the terrorism and the white racist terrorism that shaped the South, really, and that people are still living under that today. That's not like something that happened a century ago.
No, and there was even another story. I mean, at this town hall meeting, all of a sudden people go, I got pulled over for this, and this happened to me, and this happened to me. there was a story of a young man who was with a few friends and a couple young black kids, and a white man with a paintball gun who was drunk was shooting at them, near them, and in their car. And they went over to a local car wash to clean their car, and the guy shot at him again, walked over to him, and the young black kid hit the white guy in the face as he confronted them, and now they're charging this young black kid with a felony. So even though he was shot at several times with a paintball gun, drunkenly came up to these young people and in what most people would say self-defense, struck the man, and now he's facing felony charges. And just tell me, in what world do you come to a crime scene and there's only 2 people there, there's only 1 gun there, and 1 person was shot in the face 3 times, and no arrest was made? And that man's walking the streets. I mean, that's what's so scary, is that at any moment this person can, he's obviously not in a healthy state to shoot and kill somebody.
Right.
And if you shoot and kill somebody at point blank range, you're also not going to be in a good mental health state.
Right.
And now people are gathering collectively to say, we've had enough, and they're naming you. Who knows what this person could do one night if he lashed out at any community member that talks. I mean, it's terrifying for the people, but the show of strength that this community would come together and support one another. I mean, half the people there hadn't even heard the whole story. They just said enough is enough.
Wow.
This is outrageous. We're going to show up and support because people are asking. There's going to be another town hall next week, and I'll be surprised if the numbers don't double or triple. And I'm telling you, if this person is found not guilty, if this person claims self-defense or any of that, I think people across this country are going to find themselves in McLean, Florida in the next month.
Well, if you're going to go back down there, Bob, at the next town hall, are you going to go back to the next town hall?
Unfortunately not. I think we're going to continue to wait to see how it plays out. We're currently organizing and working with groups like Color of Change, Movement for Black Lives, and a whole host of different groups across the country. The Root's been completely supportive in writing articles. Local press has picked up on the story. We're going to continue to mobilize and bring different groups together to support the family over the next weeks. In many ways, I think we're going to continue to put pressure on the Baker County Sheriff's Office, even though they say, hey, we don't have anything to do with it because we've handed the case off. Well, you know what? We're going to sure as hell pressure you into speaking up because you're an elected official.
Right.
I don't care if you handed it off. At the end of the day, they have a reputation. We're going to continue to pressure the state's attorney, William Servan, to press charges. He doesn't need to wait for an investigation. What more information does he need? One person is shot dead in the face. There's 1 person left standing with a gun. What else does he need to wait for? So I think the general strategy that they'll use here is now to continue to build a coalition, continue to get national attention, continue to make phone calls and gather. And I think the hand will be played by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and the state's attorney when they decide to wrap up the case and either press charges or not press charges. And that will, from there, dictate what the family and the community does.
Okay, so where can people who are watching, because people are asking where they can support, where can they find information as it goes on? And of course, will you come back and give us another update in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, again, thank you so much for highlighting and being supportive of the case. The best way for people to support right now is to go to the Facebook page, Justice for DJ Broadus. That's Justice, the number 4, DJ Broadus, BROADUS. I appreciate you having it in the show description for this evening. Justice for DJ Broadus. We're continuing to look for more tips. The community's been incredibly supportive, either not sharing their names, but letting us know that, for example, we know that the young man who committed the shooting, his first 2 phone calls were to his father, who was in Las Vegas, the former deputy sheriff, and then to his girlfriend before he then called. We also know, I mean, what's troubling is we're going to continue to find out more about this young person's troubled past.
Right.
He was recently fired from a mental health facility for striking an employee.
Wow.
And had been fired from other jobs in the area. So, I mean, that's what's so disgusting is that this young man has clearly had a violent and troubled past. And talking to classmates of him and his other good friend were just calling black people left and right the N-word. But when your father's the deputy sheriff and you're buddies with everyone,
right,
you continue to get away with heinous crimes and violence, be it physical or verbal, and then you're trained to think that you can do whatever you want, like shoot a black person or shoot anybody you want at that point.
Right.
So we're continuing to ask for information, be it anonymously or be it directly. Again, I know a lot of people are scared, so the people in McLean, I mean, we had 25 people from that town hall get on a call this afternoon.
Wow.
People are ready to fight. A lot of people didn't say that we're on the call. I mean, we can see how many people were on the call and how many people spoke up. So a lot of people are listening and just trying to be supportive, but people are scared. And so the more people that go to justice for DJ Broadus, sign the petition that will be out there tomorrow, and continue to spread the word nationally. Once they feel that national pressure in this small town, and they know people in Jacksonville and Tallahassee, here in Washington, D.C. are paying attention, okay, they're not going to support this young 29-year-old kid that they have problems with if they're pressured to do so. If nobody pays attention to this, and that's what breaks my heart. I can't think of the number of families who have gone through this and didn't get the same support that we've been able to rally. And who knows if it pays off and we're able to get justice for DJ, but I'm so thankful for all the groups that have been able to speak out and be there. But man, my heart goes out to so many families, and they could have disappeared this kid. If you saw that news story, that property is 260
It's
acres.
massive, and he could have easily been disposed somewhere and never found. Very easily so.
That's the other big missing piece is his cell phone is gone. So we don't know if that was taken by police. We don't know if it was destroyed in 101 ways to get rid of a cell phone. But in the sense that we are thankful that they were able to have a proper burial. Were they able to get the medical records so they actually can finish the death certificate? No. Ongoing investigation, integrity of the record. So even the death certificate, cause of death, is still not been official, even though they have now buried DJ.
Wow. I'm so glad that you came on tonight and gave us the details for this story. And y'all, please share this video. Please share this story. Let your friends know that there are some people in this small county in Florida, Baker County in Florida, who need our support. We're not asking you to send any money. We're just asking you to sign this petition to let the authorities in Baker County know that we are watching them. We're watching them, so they have to watch their step with the people in that community, and to let those people in that community know that we support them and we want justice for DJ Broadus. So, man, thank you, Bob. Thanks so much for coming on.
Please, you guys are the best. Thanks for the opportunity to come on and share this story. I really appreciate it.
You bet. We'll look forward to more updates. Hopefully, some progress in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye. Oh, y'all. I just, when I first read the story, that was Bob Schlehuber, y'all. And Bob, like I said, is a producer for By Any Means Necessary with Eugene Puryear and Sean Blackman. He supports Black theater. He supports Movement for Black Lives and a bunch of community stuff here in DC. All around cool guy and just a really passionate warrior for justice. And that's not even a slight. That's not even an insult. That's a compliment. And the little bit of information I had about this case before I did this show was seriously like half a page, because that's all they released about this story. And that was last week. And between last week and tonight, they uncovered and found out all of this horrible information about the way this case has been handled and this horrendous history of racial intimidation that exists in this town. So listen, please share this video so that people can know about this story and this campaign, Justice for DJ Broadus. And yes, I will provide the link to the Facebook page for you so that you can sign the petition and you can support those people, the Broadus family and the members of that community. They painted a mural. They painted a KKK mural in 2002, y'all. 2002. Oh, but we're in a post-racial society, though. Oh, my God. Okay, anyway, I'm going to try to transition to something a little bit more lighthearted. Whew, I'm so disturbed, even though I'm really disturbed right now. And this isn't even lighthearted, but it is a little bit funny in a very inappropriate inappropriate kind of way, but you know how we do here. This is what you don't do at a screening of Black Panther. Woman shouts N-word, literally stops the show at Black Panther New Jersey screening. Just blows my mind. Now, the interesting thing is that Mr. Luqman knows where this county is, and his commentary on this county in New Jersey was, yeah, I can see this happening there. A white woman who went to see, let me make that a little bit bigger for you. There you go. A white woman who went to see Black Panther Kill the Vibe. Oh, I hate that autoplay stuff. A white woman who went to see Black Panther Kill the Vibe at a New Jersey theater on Sunday night. She yelled the N-word out loud and pushed audience members into a shouting match. Yes, the audience was not having it. The incident took place at the New Vision Sparta Theater in Sparta, New Jersey, which is a predominantly white township in Sussex County. Again, Mr. Luqman is very familiar with Sussex County and Sparta, New Jersey. And according to him, he's like, yeah, I can see that happening there. The article goes on to say that it seems that the unidentified woman was extremely intoxicated and was not yelling at anyone in particular, Sparta Police John Lamond said Tuesday. She was making loud comments at the screen that upset other patrons, Lamond said, including using the N-word. Gee, I wonder what would have made her say that. Only one person could point out the woman to police, but were charges filed against her? Reportedly, no. See, we just finished talking about a case in which someone, a white person, who grew up under the privilege, the shadow of privilege in a racially intimidating town, and doesn't get charged. So is it really a surprise that a lady can yell out the N-word in a movie theater and doesn't get any charges filed against her? Nothing. Not public intoxication, not disturbing the peace, not being a nuisance, nothing. No charges were filed against her. The person who identified the intoxicated woman declined to sign a complaint. People get mad if you talk too loud in the movie theater. How are you not pissed off that a woman yells the N-word in the movie? Folks viewing the film were then kicked out and given vouchers to return at a later time to see the movie. Now that part really made no sense to me. How do you kick other people who were trying to watch the movie out and give them a voucher to come back later? Why don't you just kick the drunk lady yelling the N-word at the screen out? That makes no sense to me. As you may have guessed, the woman who went into hate mode at the cinematic celebration of Afrofuturism was told to exit stage left. She was banned from the theater. We gave them advice to send her a certified letter not to trespass and to give us a copy, Lamond said about the woman. We are happy to report that the negative incident has not stopped Black Panther magic. Yes, Robin, she was white because Sussex County in New Jersey and Sparta, New Jersey is predominantly white. So yeah, not everybody is vibing on Black Panther like we are, y'all. I just thought that story was kind of amazing at how even drunk, some people mad at black people doing good at the movies. So last week we began our discussion of Black Panther, and we didn't get to talk about everything we really wanted to talk about. And before I get to the rest of the stuff that I want to talk about tonight, I really want to wrap up the really important themes in Black Panther. So yes, there are some spoilers here. And at this point, if you haven't seen the movie, there's something wrong with you. So yes, there's spoilers. So if you don't want to know what happened, don't talk. I don't, no. It's okay. You can stop watching. But so we talked last week at length about the CIA, the problem with the optics of the CIA in this movie, and portraying the CIA in some type of positive light because of the real history of the CIA being involved in subverting, toppling, or toppling the regimes of, or just straight out being involved in the assassination of black leaders, especially black leaders in Africa, who were Pan-Africanist, who were liberation focused, who were anti-West, who were anti-imperialism, and who were all about uniting black people, around the world and using Africa's resources for Africa. So go back to last week's show and check that that discussion out. But having this guy who is a CIA agent shooting down Wakandan aircraft carrying weapons that would arm the oppressed to rise up against their oppressors in the context of the real history of the CIA, subverting liberation struggles and deposing or straight out assassinating liberation leaders in Africa. I'm sure that history was not lost on somebody who were the writers of this script. And as my husband and I were sitting there watching the movie, we're like, wait, is the CIA guy really just gonna shoot our liberation down out of the sky? Because they couldn't have the CIA guy kill either T'Challa or N'Jadaka or Killmonger, so they had him do the other thing. The next best thing was to be the one who stops the tools of liberation from getting to the people who need to be liberated. That's what the CIA has always done. They just presented it in a jokey kind of, I'm a hero kind of manner, but understand that in the real history of the CIA involved in African leaders, nothing that they have ever done has been heroic. Nothing. So the other thing that I found interesting over the past week since we did our last show is that people are making a big deal about Killmonger and the way he has treated women, and people are saying he's a misogynist and he's no hero because he's a misogynist. But this is what I want people to understand about Eric Killmonger. People love the egalitarian society of Wakanda, how women and men are equal and women are powerful and women are decision makers and women are the head of tech and, women are making weapons and women are fighting battles and being fierce, and men have no problem with that because they see themselves as equal and co-warriors and all that kind of stuff. People in Wakanda have that view because they were raised in Wakanda. So that's the way Wakandan society is in regard to gender. But that's not the way American society is. And we know that because we live in American society, right? So I believe that Eric Killmonger is not so much of a misogynist because he hates women. He is a product of the environment he was raised in. When Wakanda abandoned him, when he was abandoned by his uncle and not taken back to Wakanda to grow up in all of this wonderful egalitarianism, he was left in racist, sexist, classist, imperialist, capitalist America. And that's what he was raised into. That's where he was trained. And the kind of training he received in the military basically directed his thinking to believe in the American ideals of conquest. If there's something I want, anybody and anything that gets in the way, I am going to remove it. That's the American way, y'all. So I kind of felt like it was weird that people were looking at isolated incidences of Eric Killmonger mistreating women and not seeing that those behaviors as a part of his larger story of how he came to be Eric Killmonger instead of Njadaku, which was his birth name. Had he grown up in Wakanda, that's what he would have been called. But because he grew up in America, he was Killmonger. And you know how we do in this country. Once we want something, anything that gets in our way, we taking it out. Man, woman, child. We don't care how we do that. We will barrel bomb you. We will drone bomb you. We will drop atomic bombs on you twice. The first time to shut you up, the second time to prove a point to everybody else around you. We will send troops into your country, open military bases, hundreds of military bases across your country, and carry out military operations in the middle of the night. We will give money to countries that kidnap and arm children to fight their wars and then act as if, oh, that's a horrible thing. How could anybody do that? And then we'll turn around and issue sanctions to the very countries that we gave money and weapons to arm children. That's how we do. So how are you surprised that Eric Killmonger wasn't in love with black women? Man, please, he wasn't in love with anybody. The only thing he saw was his goal. As righteous as his goal may have been, his tactics were tainted again by where he was raised, by the society he grew up in. And this brings me to no, I have to skip over that. So I wanted to get to I'm gonna go there because I think that's the common sense place to go. So yes, Killmonger wanted to liberate all the oppressed people around the world, having grown up in American society and having seen the oppression of black people, not just in America, but around the world. Yes, he has killed some of those people for the American government and outside of the American. I told you, he's twisted because of who raised and trained him. So when he decides he has an opportunity to carry out a plan to free the oppressed people of the world, his plan is tainted by the arrogance of the country that raised him. And I know this because, and Abdus actually had to point this out to me because I'm not a military historian like he is, but he's very astute at this. And he asked me about Killmonger's plan. What's the one thing if you want to win a war that you cannot ever do? And I'm sitting here coming up with all kinds of weird, you know, you can't commit war crimes. You can't all kinds of things that were not the answer. But here is the answer. Here's the one thing you can never do if you actually want to win a war. You cannot fight on all fronts. This was seen to be true when Hitler tried to take over the world. Also, it was Napoleon's problem. His armies, Hitler's armies, and Napoleon's armies were spread too thin because they were trying to invade everywhere. And that arrogance, that greed, as noble as his idea to liberate and to arm the oppressed people of the world to rise up against their colonizers rather, and everyone who sided with them, noble idea, but his plan was horrible. The tactics were going to fail because you can't arm all of the oppressed people all around the world at the same time and guide those theaters, those campaigns from one place and keep a handle on everything. So Killmonger, again, he was just a product of of the society that he was raised in. Good intentions, but the way he went about doing it were horrible. But the way he went about doing it was the only way he ever knew to go about doing anything, to go about achieving anything. It's how he'd been taught to get what he wanted, because he had been getting what the U.S. wanted from him all this time. So I just thought those were some interesting additional thoughts on Black Panther and Killmonger. I don't know what is going on in this conversation on Facebook. Women more than men can see how black men have incorporated the colonizer's mindset. Well, Tamiko, I actually believe that to a certain degree, black women have also incorporated some of the colonizer's mindset. And some of that comes in the way we just kind of diss black men sometimes off the break. Sometimes, and I guess I'm going to have to do a show on that too, but please don't think that black men have been more susceptible to internalizing anti-black white supremacist ideas against black women. Don't think that black men are more guilty of that than black women are. No, I think we've been equally, we have equally internalized some problematic ideas about and toward each other. And we almost can't help that, because we all grew up in this white supremacist patriarchal society that from the time we stepped foot on this land intended to break us apart. So I'm really kind of not in the business of pointing the fingers more at one, men or women. No, we've all got some work to do, because we've all been infected with this disease. So we've all got to be cured and healed from it. All right, so the last Black Panther thing that I want to talk about is T'Challa's speech at the UN. If you stayed for the end of the credits, you saw that T'Challa makes a speech at the UN where, now this is after he has the fight with Killmonger. He knows what Killmonger's plans are. He knows that he was angry at his ancestors for isolating Wakanda and for not intervening to help black people around the world all this time. It was wrong to do that. It was wrong to leave N'Jadaka behind. It was wrong to kill N'Jadaku's father. All that kind of stuff. T'Challa has had all these realizations. Yet he goes to the UN and he tells the United Nations, which is full of colonizers, I am going to now help everyone with Wakanda's vast resources. He doesn't make this speech at the African Union, right? Where he could have said, Wakanda has been here all this time, Africa, and we're sorry that we turned our backs on you, turned a blind eye to your suffering. But now, Africa, we're going to use our resources in Wakanda to heal this land and to help our people. Nope, he didn't do that. He went to the United Nations and told all of these leaders some of whom have been very complicit in the continued imperialism and neo-colonialism of Africa. I'm going to use the vast resources of Wakanda to help everyone. Are you serious? You're going to help everyone? Everyone doesn't need Wakanda's help. The Africans do. The oppressed African Americans, the descendants of slaves, do. But the rest of those folks and I know it might seem like, well, gee, Jackie, that's really mean. But when you're talking about conveying the idea of black liberation and the agency of black people, that scene is really, really dangerous, especially when you know that I think it was Patrice Lumumba. I think it was Patrice Lumumba who actually did go to the UN, actually did go to the United Nations and make a speech telling the United Nations that he was going to use the resources of Africa to help African people. And he didn't want their help, and he didn't want their interference. And Patrice Lumumba didn't live long after that. So when you know the history of these kinds of things, these kinds of movies are not just innocent entertainment. And I'm a little bit, and I know that I have to be careful that I don't condemn people because they don't know this history. But it's frustrating when I hear so many people, especially black people, say, why are y'all taking a movie this seriously? It's just a movie. First of all, comic books were never just comic books, right? Considering that all entertainment is either somebody's view of culture and what they think culture, somebody's culture is, or entertainment is propaganda to get you to see somebody's culture in a certain way. And a lot of times entertainment can be both things. And I think that this movie Black Panther is one of those things, just like I think the comics Black Panther was one of those things. And there are excellent elements in the movie and elements that really should be celebrated. And there are some socio-political messages that are really dangerous. Having said that, I think this story is going to unfold differently than we might think it is going to. I have read a lot of the comics, haven't read all of them. I know that the story takes a few turns. I'm not going to tell you what they are. I'm not going to tell you what those turns I think they're going to be. But I will tell you that this is not going to be the only Black Panther. This story will continue. So there will be some evolving and some maturing and some calibrating of roles. And some of these themes are going to turn, I think. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch. I don't think this turning is going to happen in the next movie. Yes, there is going to be a next movie, because the next movie is going to be Infinity Wars, which I'm very excited about because I am a comic book geek. But I believe there's going to be another standalone Black Panther movie after Infinity Wars. That's just my thinking, because this one is so incredibly successful. So that is our wrap up on Black Panther. Oh, no, it's not. I'm so sorry. One last thing. This whole thing. Yeah, Afrofuturism. I love it. I love good sci-fi. We love good sci-fi, y'all. And it is so hard to get good science fiction today because people just don't have the kinds of imaginations that can fill out a whole movie. But this was great science fiction. It was Afrofuturism, like Tamiko says. It was, you know, things to celebrate for Black people. It was things to think critically on for Black people. I mean, it was great. It was everything. And I'm looking forward to the next installment. I did have a problem with the whole buying buildings in Oakland and pretty much opening up a STEM school. I mean, instead of using Wakandan technology to improve Africa, you're going to go buy 2 buildings in Oakland and introduce and use and teach the kids in the neighborhood how to use Wakandan technology. You basically opened a nonprofit and started a STEM school, which that's not a bad thing. It's not bad. It's just like incremental, piecemeal crumbs of a solution, but you're going to use Wakandan technology on a nationwide basis, on a global basis. You're going to give that to the UN? Get out of here. All right, so that is the end of our analysis of Black Panther. Whew. We're going to have to see that again probably next week. We haven't had a chance this week. I hope you guys have seen it. And if you have not, I do encourage you to see it because it is a very good movie. Above everything else, it's just a good movie. It really is. All right. So I did have a little break in here for you guys. So, but I didn't have any additional music for you. So I need to set a couple of things up. And I'm just going to put the intro screen up for like 3 minutes. Don't go away. Just going to take a little break. I will be back in 3 minutes. Hey y'all, I am back. Thank you so much for joining us tonight in live in Coffee Current Events in Luqman Nation. So for the rest of the show, I want to focus on something that has been really bugging me for the past, I don't know, couple of months. I keep having conversations with Black people who seem to believe that the only thing Black people need to do to overcome our condition, our economic condition, most notably in this country, is to do a few things. These things always have to do with changing our personal behavior, which is a serious problem, because the implication is that almost 40% of Black people live in poverty because they've all made bad decisions. That's why people focus on this. You know, all you need to do is save your money. All you need to do is start a business. All you need to do is there is no all you need to do in regard to Black people in this country overcoming the situation we are in now. And I keep saying situation, and I know people don't quite understand the situation we're in now. And I think that for some Black people who are making a little bit of money, and they certainly have it better than their parents did, right? And they might be living in a pretty nice neighborhood, and they're able to put a little bit of money aside. They're doing well individually, so they think that because they are doing well individually, then the only thing everybody else needs to do is do what they do. But they very often don't understand that they're almost the exception. A lot of middle-class Black people, and I'm not even talking about poor Black people right now. I'm not, because that's an easy issue to talk about, right? Because you can't save what you don't have. You can't invest what you don't have. If you are deciding between rent and food this week, of course, I'm not going to have the conversation. Nobody's expecting those people. Well, no, I shouldn't say nobody's expecting those people to save, because yeah, some people actually are expecting those people to save. Because I've actually heard people say, look, you know, the reason Black people are poor is because they spend $200 on Jordans. I actually don't know too many actually poor people who have a bunch of Jordans. I really don't. Or designer purses. And if they have them, I swear they got them from the thrift store, because I saw them there. You know, so the myths that we believe about poor people and why poor people are poor, especially poor black people, middle class and wealthy black people, some of us, we believe that garbage about poor black people too. That the reason they're poor is because they spend all their money on Jordans or designer purses, and poor black people are not keeping Louis Vuitton in business, or whoever the big, who is it? What was the last one? The last big purse. I don't do purses. I mean, I'm fine with JCPenney. I might splurge and go to what is that, Macy's on the clearance rack and find one, but more than likely I'll go to Ross and or Marshall's and get a purse. But black people weren't keeping Dooney and Burke in business. You know, black people are not keeping Michael Jordan relevant. They're just not buying all his shoes like that. Not poor black people. And there are not enough rich black people. But they're just not. Oh, you know, poor black people spend all their money on entertainment and there aren't even entertainment venues in most poor black neighborhoods. Where are they gonna spend their money on entertainment? Or you can barely find a grocery store in a poor black neighborhood. How you gonna find a movie theater? So a lot of middle class people, a lot of upper class people, too many of those people black people believe these things about poor black people, and it is distressing. Hey Evelyn, I see you over there on on YouTube. I don't have my co-pilot with me tonight, so I'm kind of, let me slide over to the middle here. There we go. I think that's a little better. So, you know, the too many middle class black people, too many wealthy black people believe these lies about poor people and why poor black people are poor. That stuff just isn't true. But that, like I said, that's the easy conversation, because you can't save what you don't have. We know poor black people don't have any money to save. Can't invest what you don't have. They don't have any money to invest either. So I'm not even going to talk about poor black people tonight. I am going to talk about why even middle-class black people, middle-class black folks who might have a little extra change, the so-called disposable income that people think middle-class black people have, so they can just put some money aside, save some money, and invest some money, and leave this generational wealth to their children. While it is true that we should all save money, and most Americans actually don't save as much as they should, I should certainly save more. Saving money is a great thing. You should do it. Investing is a great thing. You should do it. For black people, however, doing those things are not going to give us the generational wealth and address the effects of systemic racism that some people think they are going to. And that's Hubs. And I can't, I'm on the air, babe. I just figured I'd just, say hey, let him say hey. So let me go to the first article that explains why this idea that all middle-class black people have to do is save money and invest money, and that's how they're going to build generational wealth to pass down to their children, that's going to help them break out of this white supremacist system. Let's see. Let me go over to my notes, make sure, keep me on track. Let me look at income first. That's a good place to start, don't you think? Income. I never just give you my opinion on stuff. I have opinions, but I like to back my opinions up with information and facts. And I will share with you all of the links to all of the articles that I am going to talk about tonight, plus some more, so you can read through them yourself and see what I'm talking about. So this article, Urban Wire, from Urban Wire, called Race and Ethnicity, it's called The Stalled, Struggling Black Middle Class. Let me maximize this a little bit for you so you can actually read it. In December, Pew Research Center released a report demonstrating that the number of households earning a middle-class income had reached its lowest point in over 40 years. The decline is due in part to growth in the number of earners at either end of the income spectrum. Basically, the middle class got smaller because the distribution got bigger. What does that mean? More people were earning more money, but more people were also slipping into poverty or had slipped into poverty. But as the distribution has grown, so has income inequality, leaving many families among the lowest earners. Where do you think the larger distribution growth happened? It didn't happen at the top, it happened at the bottom. More people fell into poverty, then became rich. While the evidence is mixed, but as the distribution has grown, so has income inequality, leaving many families among the lowest earners. While the evidence is mixed for the middle class as a whole, the black middle class is decidedly losing ground. The Pew report shows that black adults experiencing the largest income increase from 1971 to 2015 and were the only racial group to see a decrease in the percentage of their low-income earners. But black middle-class families are still far from being as financially secure as their white counterparts. Black households, by and large, have seen gains in their real income since 1979. Although each of the top 4 income quintiles have seen increases, with the highest quintile seeing the largest increase, black households still lag substantially behind white households. The mean income for the top black quintile in 2014 is virtually the same as the mean for the top white quintile in 1979. In 79. Oh, I love that. Oh, goodness gracious. Oh, all right. So this is the mean income of white people in 1979. $13,546. That is amazing. That is just amazing. The mean income for black people in 1979, $7,476. Half that of white people. And we see the increases per group of people. This is the low end. These are the lower end of the wages here. And here are the higher end of the wages. Black people have always, consistently, every year, every decade, earned less money than white people. Black families' financial gains are positive, but not necessarily secure. Why is that? Real median income for all Americans peaked around 1999. But black households have since seen the largest relative decrease in their earnings, falling by 14% in 2011 post-Great Recession, compared with 7% for white families. There is actually a reason for this that we talked about on a previous show, and it has to do with a lot of it has to do with the housing bubble. But here is the chart that shows you, this is why I love charts. because I can sit here and talk all night long, but you're looking at the numbers right here. Here in 2014, now look at this, look at this. Let me go back to 1979. The median income for white people is pretty reasonable, right? It's somewhere around the middle. Nothing extravagant. Middle class. Most white people are middle class, and people are doing well. But look at what black people have always been working with. And there was this one tiny period of time. This was around 1999. And I think this was around the time when everybody was going to college and getting an MBA. And everybody had an MBA. And for that short period of time, black people, their gains in income outpaced the gains in white income. But the system fixed that. And you see that our gains in income have never been on par, again, with the national average or the gains in income for white Americans. If the racial disparities in income are large, the disparities in wealth, remember, this is just income. This is just your paycheck. The disparities in wealth are massive. Black families own only 1/7 of the wealth of white households, a gap averaging over $600,000 per family. Despite holding less wealth overall, black households also hold a larger share of their wealth in home ownership than white households, which hurt them more severely during the housing crisis. Now, here you are, a group of people who have been trying to break into the American dream since we were no longer slaves. We've been doing what this society told us we should do. Work hard, buy a home, build up some equity in your home, buy some land, pass that down to your children. And we've done that. So why did our high percentage of home ownership hurt us more severely during the housing crisis than anybody else? It's because of racist policies. Furthermore, black families are more likely to face an added burden of giving or lending money to poorer relatives. Because we all know people in our family who are not doing as well as we are. Black families are more likely to receive financial support from relatives, but in smaller amounts than white families. I mean, it's a messed up situation for us all around. We're always trying to help those family members who aren't doing as well as we are. And when we need help, then we get help from other family members, but we never get as much help as we need. And we certainly don't get as much help as white families who provide assistance to their family members get, because we don't have as much money to give as they do to their families. Let's see. Well, let me go down here. Now, money that could be saved or invested goes towards supplementing relatives that aren't supported by the larger economy. This is what this whole rugged individualism tries to instill in people, but nobody actually really follows it, not even successful white people, because rich white families give their family members money, they help them with loans, they provide them with access to opportunities. So there's nothing wrong with black people helping their family members. It's just that because we have so much less, helping family members keeps us at a disadvantage in regard to being able to save and invest money. So we're put in a position where we actually have to decide, do we help our family members who need our help, or do we turn our backs on our family members and get ours? That really is the situation we're in. And here's the chart. Black families are more likely to give or lend larger shares of money to relatives because nobody else is going to help us but us. Oh, this is interesting. For the black middle class, these larger economic differences not only make it difficult to support extended relatives, but also their children. The claim that many in the middle class are worse off than their parents is especially true for black families. Black children raised in middle class households in the late 1970s and early 1980s fall out of middle class status at notably larger rates than white children upon reaching adulthood. More than 35% of black children raised in the middle of the income distribution will drop into the bottom 30% as adults. Perhaps even worse, a quarter of black children will make less than 80% of what their parents did, meaning that even in this expanding economy with higher earnings as adults, they are not just worse off relatively, but objectively. Put simply, retaining middle class status is more difficult for black families across generations. And I'm going to provide you the link to that article. There it goes on to talk about projecting progress for black families. One thing we have to keep in mind when we're talking about income and comparing income over decades and looking at trends in income, the only way that means anything is if you compare the trends in income to the trends in the cost of living and the trends in inflation. Because while incomes have gone up from 1979, they have not kept pace with the cost of living, and they have not kept pace with inflation. So that even though I make more money than my mother did in 1979, this house that I am living in, that was hers, that she bought, she could not have been able to afford to buy this house at its value today. And I would have a hard time being able to afford this house at its value today with the money I make now. I'm one of the lucky ones, you see. I was able to inherit this house. My mom bought this house a year before she died, and this house passed down to me. If it had not been that way, I might have been one of the black middle class who had to move out of the Washington, D.C. area in order to afford to buy a home. Because housing prices here are astronomical, and you have to make six figures in order to afford the $2,500 to $3,000 mortgage, average mortgage in this area. And I think it's actually higher than that. But let's talk about housing. Let's talk about housing, because I'm always hearing from some of these people about how, you know, black people really need to save money and buy a home. Instead of renting, they need to buy a home. Okay. Why is that not always the ticket out against this system? Let's look at this article from the New York Times. Middle-class black families in low-income neighborhoods. This is from 2015. Many of the nation's racial disparities stem from the simple economic fact that white families make more money than black families on average, a gap that has remained stubbornly large in recent decades. Yet neither this income gap nor blatant discrimination is the only reason for the disparities. A new study by 3 Stanford researchers highlights another big cause: the neighborhood gap. Even among white families and black families with similar incomes, white families are much more likely to live in good neighborhoods with high-quality schools, daycare options, parks, playgrounds, and transportation options. The study comes to this conclusion by mining data and uncovering a striking pattern. White and Asian American middle-income families tend to live in middle-income neighborhoods. Black middle-income families tend to live in distinctly lower-income ones. So let me go down. The findings are especially notable because they come shortly after a separate research project by 2 Harvard economists that we've covered in detail at the Upshot. And again, I'm going to give you a link. I'm going to give you the link to this article so you can look at these studies yourself. The project has tracked several million children since the 1980s to analyze how the area where they grew up affected their lives. Children who grew up in better neighborhoods, which tended to have less poverty, less crime, more two-parent families, and schools with higher test scores fared much better as adults than otherwise similar children from worse neighborhoods. Consider these numbers. A typical black child living in a household with $100,000 in annual income, now this was in 2015, lives in a neighborhood with a median income of $54,000. And a black child in a household making $50,000 typically lives in a neighborhood with a median income of $42,000. White and Asian children are much more likely to live in neighborhoods where median income is similar to or higher than that of their own family. Latino children fall in the middle, less likely than white and Asian children to live in middle class or affluent neighborhoods, but more likely than black children to do so. They say that the gap is actually smaller, almost disappears in the Midwest. So it appears that the Midwest values diversity more than either coasts do, or the North, and certainly the South. Let's see. There is something I wanted to... Oh, here we go. Now, here is where people like to leave this discussion about housing, the housing or the neighborhood gap. Of course, the neighborhood gap arises in part from voluntary choices. Many Americans of all races prefer to live among people who are similar to them. Note Mr. Reardon and his colleagues Lindsay Fox and Joseph Townsend. For African Americans, such a choice often means living in lower income areas given the racial disparity in incomes. Now, I'm going to have to challenge that, because when you have children and you are looking at a neighborhood to live in, and you are looking at the quality of the schools, the safety of the neighborhood, the availability of services and transportation in the neighborhood, living around people like you falls way down on the list of priorities. Schools, safety, transportation, convenience. When you have children and a family, those things are just as important to black people as they are to everyone else. So I absolutely have an issue with this right here. But they do kind of clean it up in the next paragraph. But the neighborhood gap is also a reflection of the wealth gap. White families have considerably higher net worth than black families, even after controlling for income. A white family making $50,000 is much more likely than a black family to have the savings for a down payment on a house in a middle-class neighborhood. This is not just because black people help their poorer family members out more. It's not just because black people buy Jordans. It's not because black people buy designer bags. It's because black people make less money than white people. So white people are more likely to have the money to save for a down payment. And it's not only that. Some of the wealth gap, in turn, is a result of outright discrimination. Many of the generous federal housing programs of the 20th century were for whites only. Even in the North, as Richard Rothstein of the Economic Policy Institute has detailed, through the Federal Housing Administration and the racist redlining policies. Meanwhile, more subtle discrimination continues, even after the passage of the Fair Housing Act that was supposed to have eliminated discrimination in housing. A 2013 study by the Department of Housing and Urban Development found that black home shoppers were often shown fewer options than similar white shoppers. Taken together, the research shows that neighborhoods matter enormously to a child's life chances and play a big role in the nation's racial inequalities. Now, these are not the kinds of things that people who don't want to do better for themselves and their families intentionally do to themselves. We're not talking about black people who don't care about trying to amass generational wealth. These are black people who are making good money and who very often have the qualifying credit scores and incomes, but they are not approved for loans. They are discriminated against and are given a higher interest rate by some financial institutions when they do receive a loan. As the article said, they're shown fewer houses, and they're not shown houses in the nicer neighborhoods where they can't afford to live. So we're not looking at a population of people that just doesn't want to save money and just doesn't want to do better in growing or accumulating generational wealth for their children. They can't. They can't, because the system is literally set up to make sure that we're not able to. Even when we do everything right, when we get a degree, when we earn more money, when we try to move out of the hood, move into a nice neighborhood, get our kids into a nice school. Yes, we earn more money than our parents did, but the cost of living and inflation still going up. Things are much more expensive than they were then, and we just are not making the kind of money that people who are making a lot more money than we are just because they are white are making. That is policy. That's practice. Saving money and investing money will not address that. Policy addresses that. Let me tell you how policy, when it's not used properly, fails us. One of the things that was mentioned in one of these articles was the way that black home ownership didn't serve us well in the last recession. We did a show a while ago about how in the last recession, black people lost more wealth because of the housing bust than any other group of people, with the exception of Latinos. But even Latinos have recovered the value, much of the value of what they lost in their homes. Black people still haven't recovered that wealth. And not only have black people not recovered that wealth, but when the Obama administration crafted the policy that was supposed to assist homeowners who were affected by the discriminatory practices of the banks, that policy did not go far enough in recovering the losses for the people who were discriminated against, because the fines that were paid by these massive financial institutions, the Wells Fargos, the Citibanks, the JP Morgans, those fines were paid because they were found to have violated federal anti-discrimination law against black people. No one went to jail. And these multi-billion-dollar fines that were paid, their victims did not receive that money. Instead, this HAMP program was set up. And it was so onerous, it was so circuitous, it wasn't streamlined, and it was so frustrating that most people who signed up for the program ended up dropping out, because the people who were administering the HAMP program were some of the same financial institutions that caused the recession in the first place. That is what happens to you when you don't understand the importance of politics in addressing problems that politics caused. We did not advocate for better solutions, better redress, for actual reparative justice in the form of solid economic solutions for what was taken from all homeowners, absolutely, but disproportionately black homeowners. And it was disproportionately black homeowners who lost the most wealth out of everyone else. And those people haven't recovered. So even these people could save their money all they wanted to. They could invest all they wanted to. But when these banks decided that they wanted to pull the trigger on these fraudulent loan instruments, and then people's payments ballooned to 2, 3, 5 times as much as they originally were, then all those savings were wiped out trying to keep up with payment. These people did everything they were supposed to do. They did everything right. That's why we need politics to address these issues, and not black respectability finance, not being instituting your own personal austerity, not ever buying Starbucks, not ever going to the movies, not ever buying anything nice, because the responsible thing to do if you're black, if you really want to buck against the system, is amass your own personal wealth. The system is not set up for us to amass our own personal wealth. We already get paid less than white people for the same job, with the same qualifications, with the same education. Let's see. I'm running out of time here, so definitely going to pick the rest of this up next week. But I want to share this with you before I go. Let's see, is this... Yeah, oh, let me go back, because this is in response to the other claim that people make, that all we need to do, all black people need to do, is start our own business. And, oh yeah, this is the article. While starting your own business is great, I'm all for entrepreneurship. I'm all for people being able to be their own boss and to find something that they love to do and do it, and have the ability to make money off of it. Absolutely do it. Gangbusters, do it. Yes. But that's not going to lift black people out of poverty. You know why? Politics, policy, practice. Let me show you why. $1.2 million grant to investigate banking discrimination in small business lending. A $1.2 million grant from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation to the National Community Reinvestment Coalition will support mystery shopper testing of small business lending practices at banks in 3 U.S. major metropolitan areas. Why are they doing this? Let's see. American culture has long celebrated hard work and entrepreneurship as the mechanism of the American dream. But our research shows discrimination remains a daunting obstacle to minority and women business owners, said John Taylor, President and CEO at the NCRC. We often talk about the American dream, but we have forgotten what it stands for. This grant gives us the opportunity to ensure this dream is truly attainable for all Americans, regardless of race and gender. For years, we've seen anecdotal evidence of discrimination in the lending practices of banks with small businesses, said Jerome Williams, Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost of Rutgers University in Newark. Now, with this larger scale study, we will apply the most rigorous scientific methods to validate anecdotal claims of discrimination self-evident in small business lending. Business and trade have powerful wealth-building effects on society when it's a level playing field. Unfortunately, our early research in this area indicates that access to capital may be unequally distributed in our society, and capital is the lifeblood of industry. So, despite Black people doing everything we are supposed to do, and we do, and we always have, we've saved money, we've bought homes, we've gone to college, we've gotten degrees. We've gotten 2 degrees, and we've gotten master's degrees, and we've gotten doctorates. And we've moved our kids out of the ghetto, and we've stopped with the frivolous purchases. We've invested. And then when we want to start our own business and we go to a bank to get a small business loan, we're discriminated against. Why? Because we have poor financial behaviors or habits? No, because we're Black. When we have the credit score and the income to qualify for a prime rate mortgage, and we go to the bank and we're steered toward a subprime loan anyway, that doesn't happen because we're all financially irresponsible. That happened to millions of Black people because they were Black. And because of the systemic racism inherent in this system that is carried out by people who use the system against Black people, and they know they're doing it. Remember, one of the bank executives was quoted as calling Black potential lenders mud people. Do you think that was an isolated incident? In a country with the history that we have regarding race relations, do you really believe that most white people who don't live around Black people and who really question our morals as individuals because of some of these narratives out here about Black people and our irresponsible behavior, you don't think they look sideways at letting us have access to the same tools and avenues of capital and wealth building that they have? So this is just the beginning of a conversation. It's not even the beginning of a conversation, because we've been having this conversation in several different iterations before. But I really want Black people to understand that we're not saying that you shouldn't save money. You should save money. Of course you should. And we're not saying that you shouldn't invest. Sure you should. Just know that you are investing, trying to make your millions off of the 20% of the value of the market that's left, because 80% of the value of the stock market is already owned by the top 1% of the richest people in this country, and ain't none of them Black. None of them people are Jay-Z. So all these Black people talking about all you need to do if you just invest some money, understand you do not have access to the entire value of the market. You're just investing the 20% of the stocks that are left, because 80% of them are owned by the really wealthy and powerful. You're getting crumbs. And you are telling Black people that they should be ashamed of themselves for not investing over some crumbs, instead of advocating for politics and policies like the National Community Reinvestment Center is doing, that will change the practices of businesses and corporations so that the playing field becomes more level for all of us. It's not an either or situation. It's a this and that. Yes, we need to save money, and people should start their businesses, and people should invest. But those things are not going to get us free. Those things might get us comfortable individually, but us as a people, it's politics. And we need people with some money to back some of those politics. But money without politics is just money for individual people. Politics is the ability to use policy to protect what you have. That's power, right? Power, I mean, is the ability to use politics to protect what you have. If you have money without the ability to use politics to protect your money, you just have some change. What we want here in Luqman Nation is for all of us to have some power. So thanks for joining me tonight, you guys. I appreciate you hanging in with me. Join us on, I think we will be live again on Sunday night. I'm pretty sure we will be at 9 p.m. And I don't know what we're going to talk about on Sunday. There's so much stuff going on. But check us out at 9 p.m. on Sunday night and see what we've got cooking. As always, y'all, be very, very good to each other. Peace. Thanks. Good night.